Hi everyone, so glad to be here with you again. It's a beautiful day out here and I wanted to get on and continue our journey on studying witchcraft. It's under the playlist Mystical and Witchcraft, I believe it's called. So under that playlist there's going to be a lot of different things. One of the focuses will be witchcraft, so I just wanted to again continue with my book that I have, The Witch's Way, Intro to the Craft. So we've covered a few different things, and today we're going to talk about the tools of witchcraft and some of the things that you can use. So we'll start with the Athame. I have some demo ones here, but I don't have the Athame. So it's also referred to as a ritual dagger. So it can be used for casting a circle. That's probably one of the more common things that it's used for. It tends to be one you can invoke, you can evoke with it as well, but it tends to send energy out. It's a symbol of strength, of power. It's definitely masculine. And there's a truck tooting its horn. It's a masculine, it's fire, so it tends to sit in the south. The wand and the Athame do sort of the same job as far as casting a circle goes when you're creating sacred space. The wand is more feminine, so it more draws energy in, whereas the Athame will send energy out. So it's very powerful at casting a circle. So is the wand, don't get me wrong, but the wand tends to cocoon a circle and create a folding in of energy that gets mixed and blended, whereas the Athame can do the same thing in a circle, definitely, but it definitely sets up a very distinct barrier. It is also used in other ways of casting. I just was going over those notes for a circle that I lead where it's more advanced kind of witchcraft, but we're going to stick with the circle today and when you would use the Athame versus the wand, and we'll talk about both and that sort of thing. Like I said, the Athame is fire, the fire element, so it tends to sit in the south if you're going to put it anywhere on your altar. It is also the masculine in the Great Rite. The Great Rite is the masculine and feminine energy coming together. It can be a sexual act between the high priestess and the priest. But on the altar, if you're solitary or you're just doing a representation, it's the Athame going into the chalice, right? Because the Athame represents the male penis and the chalice represents the female vagina. There. So we got over the birds and the bees part. There you go. Also too, it is a bit of a myth that your Athame has to be dull. I've visited this many times with many people. They've, read somewhere that it has to be dull. No, it does not. Because back in the day, everyone carried a knife with them. You brought your knife to every function that you were invited to. You were expected to bring your own knife to, equivalent of dinner parties, that sort of thing. So the Athame very much was an extension of your own arm, and you used it on a daily basis, especially during, the burning times or the persecution times when you kind of had to hide some of your tools. You couldn't openly say, this is my ritual dagger. Nowadays, we do tend to have it as a ritual dagger, that we only use it when we're in circle, when we're doing ritual or spell work. It does not tend to be our kitchen knife that we're dicing celery and onions and other things with. So it has transitioned a little bit, but it is still a myth that you do not have to have a dull one. Some people prefer dull because they feel it's safer. You do cut things with it. You can cut things with it. So I'm a big believer in a sharp knife is a safer knife. And just be mindful with it, of course, because it is a sharp object. Even if it's dull, it can do a lot of damage. It can, in fact, do worse damage if it's dull. So I have no problem keeping my Athame sharp. Now, like I said, then there's the wand. So the traditional use of the wand is to cast a circle, to draw magical symbols like the pentagram or the pentacle, depending on what you need it for, to be a beacon for spiritual energy, that sort of thing. So traditionally it's carved from the wood of hazel, ash, rowan, or willow tree. So those are the four sort of traditional ones. However, I have had many wands come and go in my life, and I found that it's whatever speaks to you, whatever feels right in your hand, whatever, again, much like the Athame is an extension of your arm. If you're going in the woods and you're looking for a stick, I would generally pick one up off the ground as opposed to snapping a branch off of a tree. If you feel very called that this particular branch that's growing on a tree is your wand, then by all means, please, please, please ask the tree for permission, because it's not very nice to just walk up and snap a branch off of a tree, because that's his arm or her arm. So if you can, I would prefer that you get it off the ground of a branch that's already fallen, and thank the trees around, if you don't know which particular tree it came from, for the gift of this wand. And like I say, wands for me have come and gone. So I've had a few in my life and I just wait for them to kind of enter. So the wand, unlike the Athame, is kind of the opposite. It's female as opposed to male. It is also of the air element as opposed to the fire. So a little bit of opposite there, not quite opposite because she's not water, but she's all about the intellect and the thinking and the inspiration, whereas the Athame is about that power of fire, that sending of protection, that sort of thing. So that's the sort of the difference between the two. And the Athame, the wand, sorry, would sit in the east, which is the direction of air, which is the element of air. The Athame also the wand tends to act as a lightning rod because, again, it draws energy in and sort of combines it in the circle, and that's what that wand is good for, is bringing in more energy and churning it up in the circle and creating a lot of energy, whereas the Athame, although very powerful, tends to do outside work. So it's that protective shield, it's that sending out, if you want to send energy to someone, that sort of thing. So the Athame, the wand was often the staff of the broom. So wands can be fairly large. I do have a walking stick right now that is my wand, and she's all decorated up and she looks beautiful. I love it. It fits in my hand really well. I feel very divinely powerful when I'm using it. So it doesn't have to be just like a little wee stick that you found, or, like a Harry Potter style wand or anything. It can be as large as you want it to be. I wouldn't be pulling logs out of the forest or anything. That's a little bit ridiculous. Now then there's the broom, which is the traditional, what everyone thinks of when they think of witches flying on brooms. And there used to be a spring rite that would happen, a ritual that would happen with the blessing of the crops in the Celtic times, and a lot of women would get on their broom and dance around, or they would sort of shake their brooms at the crops as a way of providing good luck and fertility for the crops to grow and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where, and a lot of times they were had drank a divination drink like a mugwort tea or something, and so they were a little bit maybe loopy, and this is kind of where this idea of witches flying kind of came from. So no, we can't really fly on brooms, but the broom is more than just a flying thing. So like I said, it's a traditional witch item. I have my little broom here that I keep in the parlor, and it's representative of the goddess Hecate, which is one of the moon goddesses, but she's a goddess of many things. She's the goddess of witches. She's also the goddess of the hearth, and the broom is often, with the hearth. That's what you're sweeping, is the ashes from the hearth, and it's a very powerful thing. And the broom, is used for many celebrations. You're jumping over the broom when you're hand fasting or getting married, kind of thing. But the broom in everyday life is used to sweep away negativity. So when you're cleaning your area for wherever you're going to be casting your circle or holding your ritual or whatever it might be, you're going to sweep literally as well as figuratively. So it doesn't hurt to give the floor a good sweep, but you can also use your bassoon, as it's sometimes called, to brush away any negativity. You can use it on people to kind of brush away negativity on yourself, to make sure you're going into the circle sort of in perfect love and perfect trust and in a good emotional state kind of thing. So like I said, it's also used in hand fasting rituals. It brings happiness to the couple when they jump over the broom. It's kind of like a threshold. It's also I put here, I love this little thing. If you want a guest to leave, then place your broom at the door. If a broom falls, by the way, it means a guest is coming. If it falls randomly, just kind of, oh, the broom fell. That old myth is that a guest is coming. If you want the guest to leave and they've overstayed their visit, then you put the broom by the door and it will somehow magically make them leave. And I've used that technique and it has worked. So I didn't say anything like, here's your hat, what's your hurry or anything, but I put the broom by the door and boom, they were gone. So it was like, yay. So the broom is in the north quarter because the broom is all about the goddess and earth, that sort of thing. It's a very earthy kind of tool. So you would put that in the north corner, which is the element of earth. If you wish to receive a message you've been waiting for, then put your broom in the north corner of your ritual area. The message will come within one cycle of the moon. So that's another little tidbit to hang on to that you can use with your broom. If there's some news or you've gone for a job interview and you want to find out and it's going to take a while because there's all these hoops that you have to jump through, then put your broom in the north quarter and the news will come a little bit faster for you. And it usually will come within that moon cycle kind of thing. So then there's the cauldron. So I have a wee little cauldron, just a tiny one, because I'm often traveling to different moon circles and goddess circles and witch circles to do work. So this is a nice handy cauldron to travel. It is good and heavy. It's made with cast iron. I was just doing a project on cauldrons because we're going to be consecrating our cauldrons at the next moons, at one of my next moon circles. So we're going to be blessing them and awakening the tools. I will talk about that later. But this is my little cauldron, and they're often made with cast iron for a couple of reasons. Cast iron represents the woman's blood, woman's mysteries, that sort of thing, because it adds strength to our blood. Because this cauldron represents our womb, right? So it's our womb, as well as the chalice does too, but this also represents our womb. And there's a lot written about cauldrons and whatnot. Also, cast iron is a natural element, I guess you would say, that sort of banishes negativity. So not only is it black that banishes negativity, but cast iron also. So it's a double whammy. It's all about protection. It's all about banishing that negativity. So, and I mean, who doesn't love a bubbling little cauldron? It's just so cute, right? Now, when it's this small, usually if it's the diameter, there's the diameter. So you can tell from my hand, like my fingers go over it. So it's not very, like my hand can cover it kind of thing. So it's not very big. But anything sort of 12 inches or lower is called a gypsy pot because they're travel size, right? Now, the thing about cauldrons, there's a lot of history behind them. It's in a lot of myth stories. You know, cauldrons are sort of the beginning of the universe, where they've been born from, where the universe has been born from. The source of all rivers, I believe, is a Norse legend. Again, it represents the womb. It's all about transformation. It is a fire element because it tends to hold the fire. Of course, it goes in the fire. Nowadays, we tend to put a charcoal disc inside. I have a charcoal disc in there. So there's a charcoal disc. I did a whole thing on smudging, and you can smudge with your cauldron as well. So hopefully I didn't just put black on my nose, but so there's a charcoal in there, so you can light the charcoal. So often nowadays in modern day times, cauldrons tend to hold the fire as opposed to going into the fire, but they can do either or, and you tend to burn herbs and things like that. And they're about transformation, because it's transformation through heat and fire. And again, if you're putting stuff in where you're cooking in a cauldron, or if you cook in cast iron, you know, it's the heat that kind of gets everything going, and it's transforming the raw food into your dinner. So, oh, also too, about the legs. So mine has 3 legs, as you can see. So mine, a lot of them either have 3 or 4 legs. 3-legged ones tend to represent the faces of the goddess, Maiden, Mother, Crone. And if you have a 4-legged one, then that can represent a few different things. It's entirely up to you what you feel it represents. But if it's got 4 legs, it can represent the elements, the watchtowers. It can also represent the 4 fire festivals, you know, on the wheel of the year. So there's a few different things it can represent. So they're used mainly for fire rituals. You can raise storms with cauldrons if you're into the weather magic. There's, of course, you can brew potions in them. I tend to burn a lot of charcoal in mine, so I wouldn't brew a potion in this one because it'd have to be really cleaned out. You can burn incense and herbs. You can even put a votive candle in there if you want to add that fire element to your altar. So that's a little bit about cauldrons. So cauldrons are always fun. Sometimes it can take a little while to find that cauldron that's meant for you. So, and it can take a while to find any of these tools, and it's best if they find you. So just be open to finding the tools. Don't go on a big shopping spree necessarily. Don't be, you know, I mean, always be looking, right? Always be looking. And that's another way of saying always be open. And you can do rituals at your altar too, you know, like I really want to find my broom, or I really want to find my cauldron, you know, I'm putting a calling out for my cauldron or whatever. And just always be on the lookout. They'll come to you in funny ways. Sometimes as gifts. They don't have to be given. You can go and buy your own tools. That was another myth that was going around about tarot decks. It's like, you can't buy your own tarot deck. It's like, yes, you can. You're going to be the one using it and binding with it, so you are more than in your rights to buy your own tools or tarot decks or whatever. But sometimes they're gifted to you. I've had more than one crone. Crones tend to start to give up their tools, because when you get to that crone stage, so there's maiden, mother, crone, right? So when you get to that crone stage, you start to embrace your wisdom deeper, and you're very powerful. So as you get deeper into your crone stage, you'll find that crones start to give away things because they don't need the tools anymore, because they can just create their own magic wherever they are, and the magic is just, that's who they are. They are magic, kind of thing, right? So I'm entering my crone stage. I haven't given much up yet, but I'm starting to think about it, you know, like I have a daughter and I have granddaughters, and I'm like, well, you know, this is probably something for her, and you know, maybe I'll give it to her now before I go, kind of thing. But certainly when I go, all my tools are hers. But you'll find that crones do start to give up their stuff, not because they're thinking they're gonna die. I mean, that's just one example, but just because they find they don't need it anymore. They don't want the extra stuff or whatever it is, right? So I've been lucky enough that I've had a couple of crones come into my life, actually more than a couple, and have just said, here you go. And it's like, oh, thank you. So I've gotten a few gifts that way. Or it could just be a good friend who knows what you like and can buy you a gift. Or maybe it'll just show up if you go for a walk in the woods. You know, maybe you'll find that wand that's perfect and that sort of thing. So it's funny the way tools can kind of pop into your life. Now the next tool I'm going to talk about is the sword. So a lot of people, so there's athames, wands, and swords that kind of do a lot of the same thing. They all cast circles. So I have all three. And it just depends on what you're looking to do. I tend to use the wand, or now that I'm entering my crone stage, I tend to use my finger, as a lot of crones do, to cast my circle. So I don't really use that tool a lot to cast circles anymore. But if I'm trying to draw energy in, I will bring my wand. If I'm feeling extra like I need to protect, I need to be Mother Bear, I might bring my Athame with me, because my Athame tends to bring out that warrior in me kind of thing. Now the sword, people would think the sword would bring out the warrior in me. The sword is very powerful, definitely. But the sword is used more in a formal circumstance. So the sword is more for ceremonial or high magic, not for the low magic. Now there's nothing wrong with, like, it's not high magic is better and low magic is not. Low magic is more everyday things, like I want to bring some tools into my life, or I want to bring love into my life, or I want to bring a better job into my life, or I want to connect with my spirit guide, that sort of thing. That's sort of more low magic. Ceremonial or high magic is more, I want to be introduced to the higher beings. It's all about reaching that enlightenment stage. It's about meeting the God force, or the source, or the universe, or whatever, and meditating and that sort of thing. So it is very, and it's very formalized in how it's done. Low magic, you cast your circle and you can kind of, there's a little bit of wiggle room. I maybe didn't have this in quite the right place, and maybe I fumbled here on this part of the spell, but it still kind of all works out because the intention is there and the will is there. Whereas high magic tends to demand this precision of steps, and it must be done this way. It feels a little more like church, kind of thing. So a lot of people that do witchcraft, and those that do Wiccan even, often don't actually do high magic. It's very unusual. But if you were to do that kind of magic, that is where the sword kind of comes in. The sword is also used in ceremony during certain rituals in high magic or ceremonial magic, that sort of thing. So for the most part, I mean, it's cool to have a sword, but you probably won't use it very often. But, if you want it, it's there. And I always like to tell people about it so that they are aware of the 3 things that are generally used to cast a circle outside of your very own finger. A lot of power in this finger. Then there's the chalice, or the sacred goblet, sometimes people call it. So this is a water element female tool. So this is the water one, your chalice. This is the fire one, and your chalice is the water one. So it just kind of depends on what you're feeling, what corresponds with what you're trying to cast or achieve in your circle, that sort of thing. So it's very feminine energy. Again, it represents the womb, but it's the water element of the womb as opposed to the creative fire source. Now, water can be very destructive as well. So it's all in how you want to work certain elements and what elements you identify with. Because some people work better with water, others work better with fire. I'm an Aries, double Aries Virgo is my signature in astrology. So I tend to work better with fire. I naturally gravitate towards it. I'm not a big water person. I love water and everything. I love being by the water and whatnot, but I don't always want to work with the water element for some reason. I just work better naturally with fire. I also work well with earth. So those are my 2 kind of go-to elements kind of thing. But some people love working with water, and some people love working with air, and those are their go-to elements. So again, it's all about what you identify with and the magic that you're trying to create, right? It's not that I don't work with water, because I will work with water if that's the element that seems appropriate for the magic I'm trying to draw in or create or send out or whatever, right? Now, it is traditionally made of silver, but it can also be made of all kinds of different things: glass, crystal, wood, pewter, bronze, pottery, or gold. If you have a gold chalice, you're not doing too badly. It brings in that moon energy, of course, too. I wouldn't recommend a plastic chalice if you can avoid it. It doesn't really, it doesn't really vibe too well on the altar. It is the West Quarter, and it's used to drink consecrated liquids. So kind of like in Catholic masses, when you have the body and blood of Christ, you have the cake wafers and the wine. Well, same thing with the chalice on this altar. It will often have mead or wine or even beer. We've had our water or just apple cider sometimes. You know, it just kind of depends. And it, again, like I mentioned earlier, it is part of the Great Rite. It's what's used in the Great Rite when you're doing it representatively on your altar with the athame and the chalice coming together, the male and female energies combining and creating life force and energy for you. I did mention in my book that it used to be there would be one chalice for the group and then you would pass it around. But in this day and age of colds and flus, and especially with coronavirus, you know, that's not done anymore. Everyone brings their own chalice. You drink from your own chalice so that you're not contaminating anything. So, you know, that's just done now. I think gone are the days of sharing the chalice, unless it's a wedding thing. Maybe that might happen, of course, too. Now, the other thing is the altar bell. So a lot of witches like to have an altar bell. The bell can be used for many things. The bell is very clearing. This is one of my altar bells. So this is my little aloe one, and you can tell it has a nice sharp tone to it. I have quite a few bells. I love the sound of bells. I don't know why. It's my thing. I have a whole bell ritual that I do. I do it every sort of around the springtime when we're trying to cleanse in the circle. In many of the circles I've introduced this. I learned it from a bunch of crones in their circle. So now I'm passing on that knowledge. So what that ritual is you get everyone to have a bell. So you get them to bring bells, and it's so much fun to see what kind of bells show up. And I always, when I do this ritual, I let people know we'll be doing the bell ceremony and to bring their bells, but I always have a couple extra bells on hand. I mean, it's my reason for going to flea markets and finding bells, right? So so I have more than a few, but I have a few on hand that other people can use. And what you do is you each take a turn and you make a little circle and you put the person in the center, and then you start at their feet and you just ring the bell all the way up to their head, and you bring the bell back down, ringing it the whole time. And it's like you and like 7 people or 10 people or whatever ringing the bell up and down, and you do that 3 times. And then the person exits the circle and the next person takes their turn. And it is an amazing experience. It's very cleansing. It's very grounding. And you're just vibrating afterwards. You feel very energized afterwards. So that's a neat little ritual to try. Like I said, I tend to do it in the spring, usually April or May. I'm just feeling that energy then. It's like, it's nice to brush off, you know, the old winter and get into our spring mode kind of thing. I often don't do it right at spring just because I know in Canada, you know, March 21st comes and it's supposed to be spring, but you never know here, right? So it could snow. But by the end of April or sometime in May, I'm feeling like, okay, yeah, spring's here. Let's do this ritual. So I often will do it in one of my circles, at least one of my circles that I do. And I love the bell ceremony. It's so beautiful. And anyone that's new, I'm always excited when there's someone new that hasn't done it before, because it's like you don't know what it's like until you've had it done, and then you're like, oh my god, that is amazing. So it creates a lot of really good energy, that one, but also too, a lot of solitary witches or in groups, they'll ring in, like they'll light the candle for the north, and then they'll ring that the element of earth has been called in, the element of the air for east, south is fire, and then the west for water. They'll ring it each time, or they'll ring it that the ritual, that the circle has been cast, that sort of thing. So there's key points when they might ring the bell. It's sort of up to you what you figure. I mean, I don't necessarily like to do all 4 directions of ringing the bell, because then that's a lot of bell ringing. I tend to do it once I've called the directions, called in the goddess, and cast the circle, and now the circle is open kind of thing, or now the circle is cast. And for me, I find ringing the bell just kind of seals it when I've used the bell for that purpose. Sometimes I don't use the bell at all for that, but if I do, that tends to be when I use it, because now it's sealed. And you can just ring a bell in a room if you want to cleanse a room, if you don't want to do the smudge thing or other ways of cleansing a room. The bell is a very effective way to do that. It tends to drive away a lot of negativity, especially those of other beings like spirits, negative spirits, ghosts, and things like that. If you're a believer in that, they tend not to like bells, because bells are very cleansing and are a ringing of the higher force, bringing in the higher energies, that sort of thing. So oftentimes when I've been asked to cleanse a house, I will tend to ring a bell in certain places just to make sure it's kind of clear of things, of any negativity, but also, you know, if there's anything that's sort of in the house, that sort of thing. So the bell can be used for all kinds of different things that way. Oh, also the bell in weather magic, if you want rain, it can bring in rain. There's a spell you can do to bring in rain with the bell. If you're having a drought time, ringing a bell definitely helps. You can go right out into the garden or the field or whatever and ring it and then call forth rain, that sort of thing. Now there's another sort of cutting device, and it's called the Bolin. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. So I'm going to show it to you because I don't have one. I had one many years ago and I've lost it, and it hasn't come back into my life. So I don't know, but this is what it looks like. So it's a curved handle knife, and it's used for cutting. It's used specifically for cutting herbs. You can use your athame for this as well, but this in particular is you know, kind of like those things that, you know, a scythe that you use to cut down the wheat in the fields. This is kind of like a little mini version of that, and it's used to cut herbs, and it's supposed to cut them better than just a straight old knife or a pair of scissors or whatever kind of thing. Of course, I always say when you use this, and it is actually called a witch's knife too, is another term for it. But when you use this, anytime you cut herbs or any kind of flowers or anything, ask permission first and be thankful for the rose that you cut or the lavender that you cut or the you know, the thyme or the sage that you cut. Be thankful to the plant for giving you the item that you wanted, whatever it might be, kind of thing. It's always wise to do that because we're all in it together, right? Plants, animals, us, everybody. Some of the other tools that I mention in the book are bowls. You're always going to need bowls. It's always when you've cast a circle and you're in it and you can't get out that suddenly you find that your bowls are way over there, or you didn't think to bring bowls in. Bowls of water are good because you can put salt in the bowls of water with rose petals in it on the corners of each one to add protection. You can put salt water with rose petals in it on a window. If there's, you know, something negative that's bothering you, or that you don't want anyone to come in, or whatever, you know, if you're getting a negative vibe or something, put it in the windowsill. It'll put protection out there for you. And bowls of salt are always good to have on the altar because you use salt every once in a while. Black salt, white salt, whatever it might be. I saw all kinds of different salts, so there's all kinds of different colors. Like I've got a purple one that's for spiritual, and it's got lavender in it. It's beautiful. I've got a rose petal salt, that sort of thing. So there's lots of salts out there that you can get, and, you know, have little bowls or little. I go to the dollar store, like Dollarama, or I'm sure the Dollar Tree or something, and you know those little sort of dishes you can get for under flower pots? They're kind of flat. You can get wee little mini baby ones, and I use those a lot as kind of my bowls for my water or my salt and that sort of thing, or herbs that I know I'm going to be burning, that sort of thing. So it's always handy, and they stack really nice. You know, you get 4 or 5 stacked up. They don't take up a lot of room. That's a great place to go and get those kind of things. So you don't need big gargantuan bowls, or you know pottery bowls or Tupperware bowls or whatever. You don't need huge ones. You're not going to have a big bowl of salt kind of thing. If you do, then you've got some other issues. Salt, of course, is often used on the altar. It represents earth, so it can be your earth element if you're putting elements in each of the corners of your altar. It's totally up to you. Candles, of course. I've never met a witch who doesn't have a stash of candles. Candles in all different sizes, shapes, and colors, of course. And we'll talk more about how to burn the candles and what candles are used for in candle magic specifically. I'm just mentioning candles. Crystals, of course. Crystals are kind of like potato chips. You can never have just one. Incense, all kinds of, I have a stash of incense depending on what my mood is that day, that sort of thing. Essential oils, and of course herbs, lots and lots of herbs. I am an herb witch. I'm not a green witch necessarily. I sometimes kill plants. I sometimes have plants that thrive. It's sort of a hit and miss for me. But I am an herb witch. I do know my herbs. I love working with herbs. I love the energy of herbs. So know that you can be an herb witch and you don't have to have a green thumb. You don't always have to grow your own herbs. You can have a friend who grows herbs really well and have them give you the herbs or buy the herbs off them or whatever. And then you can work your magic or make a trade somehow. Like I'll make a magic potion because I sell tons and tons of herb things. So I've got like this one. This is Come to Me Love Mixture. And it's a little bottle in here with an herb mixture. And my mixtures are very, very powerful. I have a money drawing one. I have a banishing one. I have a fidelity one. I have a good luck one. I have, what else? Happiness and joy. That's a popular one. If there's been tension in the house, you know, teenagers fighting with parents and doors slamming and, you know, that sort of thing. If there's been lots of yelling, that's a good one to kind of bring into your house. Burn it on a candle, have it in a bath, carry it around with you, just sprinkle it in the room a little bit, you know, that sort of thing. I have one that helps business owners. You sprinkle in each corner of your business and it'll draw in money, that sort of thing, right? So that's herbs. I could go on about herbs. Cords also too, twines, cords, ribbons, because you use a lot of those. So it's always good. Like my altar is actually an old dining room hutch. So it's the old fashioned kind. It has a mirror on it. So it's kind of cool. I can see myself when I'm working at my altar. But what I love about it is there's a little shelf above that holds all kinds of things. And there's 2 drawers and 2 cupboards. So that's where all my stashes of magical items are in these drawers and cupboards, so that when I cast a circle, I don't have to leave anywhere because everything's right there. That's the other thing. I was going to mention matches. Make sure you have matches because there's lots of lighting and fire involved. So, you know, candles and herbs and charcoal discs and all that kind of stuff. Always good to have on hand matches. Make sure that you have them close by. You can use the barbecue lighters if you want, whichever way you want to use it. I have, I showed on one of my videos, I have a pack of matches that I use, and they've got a skull thing. So I just keep putting more matches in there. So those aren't the original matches that were in there. And also too, get some of those fireplace matches, the really long ones, because those are good for those novena candles, for, you know, candle holders that, you know, you kind of have to stick something down into. Can be good for the cauldron as well if you're trying to relight a charcoal disc that maybe has gone out or something. It's nice to have that length so you're not dealing with the wee little ones and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna burn my fingers. So various types of matches or lighter devices, that sort of thing, always good. Now of course, last but not least, always good to have a pentacle on your altar. So the difference between a pentagram and a pentacle. This is a pentacle. Okay, so it is a pentagram with a circle around it. That's what a pentacle is. And the idea is that you should be able, I'm doing this backwards now, to draw it without lifting your pen or pencil from the paper. So you can practice that. That's part of your homework. Like I said, I could do a whole study on just the pentacle alone. But this is something that is always good to have on your altar. It can be a flat piece of wood, wax, copper, silver that you've drawn into, even clay. You can go to the dollar store and get some of that clay brick or, you know, DAS stuff, and you can make your own. I did that in one of the circles where we all made our own pentacle, because I was like, who here has a pentacle on their altar? And a lot of them didn't, so I thought, well, I'll make it one of our projects, and we'll make a pentacle for our own home altars. Now the thing about the clay ones, historically speaking, a lot of women would make them out of clay, because during the persecution times, as I'm calling them, because the burning times were only about a decade, but the persecution went on much longer than that. During the persecution times, they would have to destroy their pentacle, because if they got caught with one. Now, a lot of the people that were persecuted actually weren't witches, but the history is those that were would have to destroy it. So they often made it out of something like clay or whatever that could be destroyed quickly and easily, thrown into the fire, like a wood thing as well. And the evidence is destroyed, kind of thing, right? Now, the pentacle has an interesting history, because often when people see the pentacle, they automatically think witchcraft. They also, when they see it upside down, they think of demonic and Satanism and that sort of thing. Now, in Wicca, as you get deeper into the degrees, you do actually start to study the reversed pentacle and pentagram, because it is about banishing and that sort of thing. So it's not an evil thing when you see it upside down. It is also not, I had one witch friend who said, well, I don't like it upside down because it seems sort of sacrilegious. It's not sacrilegious. I mean, I know the Satanists kind of have got a hold of the upside down one, and a lot of people kind of associate those two things as being evil things. However, an upside down one can mean you're banishing things as well, right? Especially as you get deeper into Wicca as opposed to witchcraft. In witchcraft, we generally use it right side up, you know, whatever kind of thing. However, archaeologists have found them on Mesopotamia pottery from 3,500 BC, so it's been around for a very long time. It is not a witches or Satanist thing only. It's been around a long, long time and has a very rich history. The pentacle itself represents the female or the goddess energy. This is the earth symbol on your altar, and the goddess is drawn through the earth symbol from here, and that's how you can, you know, bring the goddess to your altar, kind of thing. Pentacles are also featured in the art of ancient Egypt, Rome, and Greece. To early Christians, not witches, they were a potent protection against evil. In the 12th century, there was a convent of nuns that actually wore it as a representative of God himself, as opposed to the crucifix or the cross. They wore a pentagram or a pentacle. It was not until the Inquisition, when heretics were hunted down, that the pentagram gained its satanic association. It's in the witch's hammer, I believe, and it's one of the signs that... So people did have these things around. It didn't always mean they were witches. They maybe didn't really fully understand what they had, because people had jewelry of it and that sort of thing, because it was used in earlier times as a symbol of protection. Like I said, that one convent used it as a sign of God himself. So the pentagram is a 5-pointed star. So that's the pentagram. Like I said, it's a 5-pointed star. The sides are which are interwoven with another, and you can draw a pentagram without lifting your pen from the paper. And a pentacle is a pentagram with a circle around it. So pentacle, when you see this, that's a pentacle. The star inside is a pentagram, okay? Just to get those things straight, because sometimes people get those intermixed and they sound a lot alike, so I can understand that. I know I got them mixed up all the time. And you can use them physically or imaginary. You know, you can actually draw, like if you're leaving your house, you can draw the symbol of the pentacle on your door as a symbol of protection, and it's there as a symbol of protection. The points on the star represent akasha, And this word is Sanskrit and used to describe the spirits, which the four elements, air, fire, earth, and water, that are essential to life, which create the spirit. In burning times, it was often drawn in a bowl of earth or formed from wax, as both could be easily destroyed if in danger. So it's often placed in the north quarter, or it's placed right in the center of your altar. So this is sort of spirit up here, and then each one of these are the four elements. This also kind of represents man, right? Man with his legs and his hands. You know, and I mean man by mankind or womankind or whatever you want to call it. All of us humans, right there. And our head is up there, you know, that sort of thing. So that's the pentacle, and that's, you know, how you can use it, kind of thing. You use it to invoke the goddess energy, and she is of the earth, so that's when you would draw on that energy. And it's always nice to have that on your altar as well. So those are the tools, the main tools of witchcraft. So I hope that was educational a little bit on how to use the tools, what to do with them. Next we'll be talking about the moon. Although I did cover that in the moon and her phases. So maybe I'll skip that and we'll go into, what are we gonna do? Well, we'll figure that out, but we'll maybe go into some of the elements. That's what we're going to talk about. Going into the elements, because we talked a little bit about setting up the altar, a little bit where everything went. I do have diagrams in the book of how to set up your altar, that sort of thing. And you know, black and white candles too. I didn't talk about those. So there's also candles that you can get in female and male forms, which can represent the god or goddess. I had a friend that, who's a witch, who had like an actual statue of a goddess and a god, which was kind of cool. You don't have to do that. Whatever you want to do. You can do a black and white candle that represents male and female energy, silver and gold candle, whatever you want to do. You don't have to go and buy big statues or anything like that. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it as to what tools you want to have. You can pick and choose. Like I said, wait for them to come into your life, because that's usually the best way. That's when you're ready to use that tool. That tool will bind with you a little bit better. Also consecrate your tools, you know, bless them and bind them to you. And then, so next video we'll talk a bit more about the elements and preparing your space and casting a circle. Okay, thank you so much for coming and watching this, and I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you here being here and watching the video, and I hope to join you again soon with more videos just like this one. Thanks. Bye.